Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm here with two special guests.
Hi, I'm Alphonse with Muse Beauty.
I'm Anastasia with Viseart.
And we are here to give you guys some more background on both of their brands. So we thought we'd get together and sit down with you guys and talk about the product line so you guys can get to know more what's behind the brand. So, this is the first question I have for you.
Sure.
Is it Viseart or Viseart?
It's Viseart.
Okay. People online fight
They
about
always
that
want
all
to
the
know. I
time.
know, exactly.
Yeah.
We get it all the time. I want that Viseart, and I'm like, sure.
I didn't have that.
I called it that in the beginning too because I was just, hooked on phonics. I was like sounding it out. So Anastasia, when did you start Viseart and why?
I was introduced to Viseart through a really good friend of mine, and the brand was just in France, very small, and we wanted to revive it and bring it back to a different kind of glorious French brand. Our roots are in the heritage of the beginning of like light engineers who used to work on set, and how they wanted makeup to really look and how they wanted it to read. So it's sort of like the original way of doing HD makeup. And that's how Viseart was sort of intended. But what that leads into is when you're looking at the makeup, what people want is something that's going to be very pigmented, blendable, consistently works every time. And so less ingredients are actually more. And in HD, that's better. So we were really wanting to make sure that as the product was growing and as the line was growing, that we kind of kept to those HD roots.
People talk sometimes like, the packaging could be better. I'm like, I would rather have all the money in the product and packaging that I can see and just grab. Like, I'm not displaying it on my vanity.
That's also something you can answer to. So when you see packaging like this, this is our proprietary packaging that we tooled, and we did it for the makeup artist. So it's very specific. It's not just something off the shelf made somewhere and we threw a bunch of product into it and we're looking for a cheap packaging. This is specific. It stacks. If it's dropped, the likelihood of it cracking is pretty slim, and that's what the makeup artist asked for. So then when we have more of a consumer market coming in and really wanting to use a pro line, we're like, okay, well, what can we come up with? And so then we sat and devised another idea with packaging, and then we have proprietary packaging again, which is the theory packaging. And we were trying to answer to what the makeup artist wanted, which was we would like to be able to interchange certain shades, or so they can release from the packet, or we would like to actually have a smaller package that we can throw into a set bag. At the same time, people who want to use pro makeup and really want high quality stuff, they're like, well, we want to have a smaller package, and we don't want to haul around 12 shades. So it kind of worked for both, but then the individual color, can we buy individuals?
That's a huge question because I keep asking.
Right.
Can we buy? Because I know like my mom, she's used all of this. That's her favorite lip color. She's like, I've used it all. Can I just get this one?
So we're a small company and we're just not there yet. We don't have the ability to hire somebody to just focus only on singles, because that's what it would take. It would take somebody to just sit down and say, okay, we're going to build the individual packages. We're going to count every SKU. We're going to make sure everybody has exactly what they need. That when you reach that level, that means that you are like 5 times the size of what we are right now.
Well, also with theory, the concept of theory, that gives you a little bit more of a wardrobe or a system, which I think really speaks to every everyday woman.
Right.
Whether you want to wear just 1 or 2 shades, or you want to have that option for a little something more. And that's what I would kind of say is like from day to play. It'll take you from one direction to the next.
And as we expand the theory franchise, it will also help the makeup artist, because they can mix and match what they need just for that particular actor on set. And they can say, okay, this is all we need for this. But you have to go slow. And it's just like we're building the product very slowly, very carefully, in small cuddles, watching every batch, making sure there are no mistakes, is the same way that we're going to be moving forward with this very carefully. And that's why having a partnership with Alphonse and a few other artists, but mainly with us, and understanding what the everyday woman would want, what the makeup artist needs, we can really refine that and be very careful and very specific with what we're doing.
I think a lot of people don't even take into account how much it is to print on the bottom and then have those all separate just for that one color.
And to keep track of all of these things, It's a lot of work.
There's a lot that goes into the formulation, the packaging, the thought, the concept, and it really is so much more than most people do think of. You know, some companies are very successful with, you know, private label or products that might be geared to a different type of customer. But Viseart has a heritage in the professional market, so it's known for that. So therefore, and it's wonderful that Viseart stays tried and true.
Alphonse, how did you start Muse and when?
Well, Muse is almost 7 years old. It's a young company. I'm one of 4 co-founders, and we're all have been within the makeup industry for a very long time. And when we came together, it was like, what do we want to do next? And really the concept was we wanted to create a platform that would support our industry, the professional industry, that would create a platform for young artists and create opportunity and jobs. And get to play with makeup all day long.
Yeah.
Now, there's a few things we do more than just playing with makeup, but for the most part, it is a love and joy of ours.
Yeah, well, you guys have some amazing classes and stuff you offer too, so that's nice for continuing education. And
I'm very fortunate. You know what? I always say I do love what I do. It's one of my hashtags, and it's really important because some people might have a job, but we have a career in our industry, and I love what I do.
Right.
And I love working with young indie brands or brands that have a heritage, and we really we just have a very unique partnership with our brands, and together we grow. It's hard to have a company nowadays and to play in this big arena, and if you can find like-minded individuals to pull together, we can make a much more positive statement going forward as our industry does grow.
And also a sense of community.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things that's lacking in our world oftentimes is a sense of community.
Yeah.
With more social media, with more electronics out there, people are isolated.
Yeah.
And so, you know, we found that we really enjoy the sense of collaboration and bringing back the arts, and actually giving back to the arts. And hopefully at some point, you know, we'll be able to do a lot more. You know, they sponsor every year.
We have a scholarship program that we work with some of our strategic school partners.
Oh, nice.
We work with the young aspiring artists in a handful of schools by working with them and supplying them with makeup kits, as well as, you know, young artists that are merging into the industry. And there's nothing better than that. That's kind of like, I was really fortunate to be taken under the wing by some great makeup artists. And well, what's better than paying it forward?
Yeah, I like that. So how did you two end up hooking up then? How did you guys end up meeting? Because I know you got some awesome exclusives prior to anybody else getting them, so I was curious.
This is great. Let me tell?
Yeah.
So it was interesting. I actually first started working with Viseart in the mid-90s. I was on a team with Kevin O'Quan. So rest his soul, he was such a brilliant man and talented. And when we would do the shows, they would come around and put the makeup down. And it was the first time I actually got to work with Viseart, and it was amazing. So we would like run to the makeup store and we would like buy it. And, you know, many years passed and Viseart exited the country. Couldn't find it. So when we started Muse, we were talking about like, well, we only sell and we only work with brands that we use in our makeup kits. Right. And that was really important to us. And I was like, well, we have to have Viseart. And I was like, well, it's nowhere to be found in the US. So I started like writing really bad French emails as good as I could. I may have studied for 5 years, but whatever, it didn't matter. And I'd write these emails and I'd go to Google Translation. I would send it off to France and there was just crickets. It was nothing.
Right.
And it was at one of the trade shows. It was
right.
IMAX.
So little did he know that he's sending these emails and we're deciding at that point whether we're going to kind of bring Viseart to the US, what we want to do with it, how we want to make it happen. Do we want to go global? Do we just want to stay in the makeup artist community? And so we're just thinking about it. So we decided in Paris, we're like, let's just go to IMAX and see what happens and bring some palettes. And
and then I remember walking down one of the aisles and I saw him like, Viseart's here. And they were swamped. And I remember saying to Anastasia, and I was like, who's the manager or the owner? And they were like, oh, it's this woman. I'm like, wow, really? Okay. Yeah. And you were so busy at the time.
Right.
And I gave you my card and I said, we must talk. It's as simple as that. We must talk.
Yeah.
And it took a couple of weeks because you were like coming back from the show and we finally got to speak. And it was such kismet and it was so meant to be because you live in the area.
Right. So I felt like, I
we're in
was
San
half time
Francisco,
in France,
they live in the area.
Half time in France, half time in the area. And it was like, wow, this is so excellent. But also the other thing that was like a tie that binds is that I have a history in the industry. on the other side of the chair.
Yeah.
And so he felt very familiar to me. And that sense of familiarity and experiencing how the market has grown, what's happened in the industry, which is, it's a natural friendship.
Yeah.
And so that was really, really lovely. And as we started to say, oh, okay, let's expand Viseart in different ways. What do you think? We started to collaborate instead of just feeling kind of isolated off in France, you know, with the brand. It was like, these are some of the things I would like to do. So we're getting to do some of the things that we talked about doing 6 years ago.
Yeah, and it really is nice. You know, Muse works with what I call a hand-curated assortment of professional brands. Some of them in the industry for 10, 20 plus years, some of them are brand new. And it really is nice to work with, you know, entrepreneurs that have a little bit of a history within our industry. And with that being said, I usually, as the creative director for Muse Beauty, I work very closely with our brands. So Anastasia and I work very closely on, you know, with product development and marketing concepts. And hey, we think this is going to work, or this is going to work, as we do with, as I do with most of the other brands that we carry as well. And it's nice because we can really, you're always stronger in numbers. One person can't possibly know everything. And Anastasia's always on set with the makeup artist. And so there's so many genres within the makeup artist industry. My background's more fashion editorial. You get to go on set, you did the modeling, you know, you were more in that genre. And then my other business partner, Deborah, she is more TV, film. She's been in the union for over 30 years. So we get to hear what the needs are within the industry. And we also get to understand firsthand all the changes with technology. So because of the change of the cameras, and they're changing these cameras more and more each year to be faster, quicker, and even a higher level of definition.
I know, that's not doing any of us a
I
favor.
keep saying,
like, stop it!
I'm like, I don't need to see the pores.
No,
I
which
mean,
is
really.
what's so interesting that, you know, way back in the 70s, when some of the brands were coming out with, you know, not using pan stick makeup at all. And the light engineers were not able to do an amazing amount of work with light anymore. It was like they were trying to figure out a way then, like, how can we make makeup look a little bit more seamless? You know, so we're kind of almost in a way like back to that, but with too much perfection with the actual technology. And the technology now is seeing what the human eye cannot see.
Which is very
hard on makeup
It's so
artists.
hard.
It's very hard on makeup artists as well. You know, there isn't this kind of ethereal
Well,
kind of,
that's so interesting. I you know, just came from a trade show, and we're speaking with makeup artists, and the one thing that we have a really hard time with is because technology is moving so fast that photographer or director can walk in and when I hit up a few buttons, it's a little more complicated than that. But all of a sudden, it's a lot faster than it. I mean, it used to be an hour and a half of a lighting test to do a photo shoot. And you had that time to do hair and makeup. So now it's like 15, 20 minutes. Okay, you done? You done? And you're like, wow.
And that's hard on the makeup artist.
Right. And our work has to be so detailed because that camera, if it's a macro shot or that camera is going to really zoom in or just with high definition, we're human. We have pores. We have little fine lines. We have, you know, little facial hairs. And our industry isn't so welcoming of those natural attributes.
Yeah. We were talking about that too on social media, just all the filters, because I'm guilty of using it too. So I'll post like a before and after sometimes so people can see, because I'm like, this one's more aesthetically pleasing. I'm feeding into the problem, and I know I am. I'm like, I just can't help myself. But people are like, well, my makeup doesn't look like that. I'm like, neither does theirs. So like, when you think like their makeup looks amazing, I'm like, I'm sorry, if you're putting on like 6 layers of foundation, you're going to be able to see that in real life. It's not going to look like it photographs or with under our bright lights and editing, and if they're color correcting and filters and a million other things.
I would say it's like, you know, to look like that, it's a lot of work. And a lot of people carrying lights around you.
Exactly. Like, just keep them out of my frame.
Exactly. Keep them out of my frame. So I just woke up this way. Exactly.
So you both have professional backgrounds in the industry. I know I talked with you over coffee that you came from being a model, right?
Yes, I did. I started very young and worked for a very long time in the industry. I was one of the models way back when, you know, Kate Moss, the beginning of the 5'7", was allowed. So I was fortunate. So I got to go into the film industry and into modeling, and I took my career very seriously. because I wanted to save up money to pay for college. So it was a very big deal to me to like be consistent, to always make sure I was working. So I worked very long hours, rarely took a break, you know, kind of beat myself into the ground a lot, and traveled all over the world. So I was fortunate enough to get to travel to so many different countries, to really understand filming from the ground up, whether it was just a catalog shoot, fashion, which of course I wanted to do, but I just didn't have the look for fashion, and I wasn't tall enough, and I just wasn't part of, you know, that more of that world. But getting to be involved in the industry in so many different ways, and getting to be involved with other cosmetic companies as well, and watching how they were building, I just gained like a lot of knowledge. So that's sort of where I come from.
And then you're a professional makeup artist, right?
I've been doing makeup for, I like to just say, round it to 20 plus years. I think it's a nice number. I'll always leave it there. But
I'll leave it there too.
Yeah, exactly. So I've been doing makeup for a really long time, and you know, I've worked in so many different genres within our industry, from doing editorial and fashion, and it was so exciting. I lived in New York for 16 years, and I got to assist Kevin O'Quan for 3 seasons, and that was a goal that I had growing up as a child in New Orleans. That was something I always wanted to do, because he was also from Louisiana. And then when I finally got to do that, and I had an agent, I realized after a while I was still living in a studio with my 2 dear friends, and there were 3 of us in a studio with 4 cats. And I'm like, I have no money. So from there I learned to diversify my skills, and I was fortunate enough to where I got an assisting job with the American color director for Chanel at the time. So I got a little more of a taste of that corporate world and understand the ins and outs. And from there, I started growing. And I did my first, stint, if you would say, my first job of maybe creating a cosmetic line. That was with back in the day with Trish McAvoy. I was one of the first on her team. And then from there, did a little more corporate work with divisions of Lauder and stuff like that. But my heart has always been with the pro division.
Yeah, that's awesome. So one of the things I love about your brands is that it's had steady growth. It's not just a flash in the pan brand.
Right.
Like a lot of these social media brands tend to come up, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I like it that this brand is aimed and developed for the professional with professionals. And one of the stories you told me when we met for coffee that I thought was inspiring was a little hiccup that you guys had.
In the very beginning.
In the very beginning with the pans and glue. So I think
So after we decided to basically work together and have Muse presenting Viseart at trade shows, we had a little hiccup, and a box shows up. We're all excited to go, and I open up the first pallet, and this is our old packaging, and the little pans, I have a few little strange marks on the pans, and I'm looking at it, and then suddenly open another one, and the pans are all over the place, and then open up more and more and more, and it's like a brown bomb is what each one looked like. Just a bomb had like exploded, and I'm shaking, and I'm thinking this was the $20,000 worth of, you know, time, effort, all of these things. And I call him, and I just start crying, and I'm like, oh, what are we gonna do? And he's like, it's the glue. It's got to be the glue. It's got to be the glue. It's got to be the glue.
It came loose.
Yeah.
Well, not to mention, I mean, you know, the shipping company is a little rough with throwing things around sometimes.
So they're like throwing things over the fence, you know, and it was like, what are we going to do? And I really did think, this is it. We have hit the wall. It's not going to happen. And so we sat down and we're like, all right, we've got 2 months. We've got 2 months. Everybody scrap together. We're going to make this happen. So we get the next shipment in. Few little glue problems as well, and we're looking at it, we're going, what's going on with glue? And I talked to a couple other owners, and they say, listen, everybody has a problem with the glue. You know, you gotta find, it's like a little too much, a little too little. You gotta find it on, you know, it's like, but you gotta glue them in, you know. And so we spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to make sure that we could package things properly with the least amount Not too much,
Right.
not too little,
Right.
glue, you know.
Well, because if I could say, it's hard because the professional makeup artists and even what I call the makeup maven, they like to depot their shadows
Yes.
sometimes. So if
Yes.
you use an epoxy that's so strong, there's no depotting them, and you'll just
Right.
destroy them,
Yeah.
as we all have trying to get one out.
Right.
So it is really a very fine balance, but you
Right.
have to protect the product too.
Yeah.
And also with moisture, so there's no, in all of our eyeshadows, there's no water. You know, we've got minimal ingredients. That's why it's so expensive. I mean, this is really expensive pigments and expensive mineral talc. And so when you have that and then you add too much glue, you can end up with moisture. And then moisture means that you're going to have a problem with the product later on.
So something your brand does that I don't know any other brands,
Right.
I can't say none because someone will be like, yes, they do. But you guys have your own chemists, you guys have your own factory that
Yes.
you manufacture this, and you even make your own packaging.
Yes, we do.
So you want to share some of that? 'Cause I think
Yeah,
it's cool.
sure. So we're very, very fortunate to have our own lab and our own factory in France, near Paris and in Paris. And we did that in order to control the quality of the product because we want to be able to stand behind a makeup artist brand 100%. We know exactly how things are going, what's happening. I mean, I've learned more about manufacturing than I ever wanted to know.
A lot of details.
Yes, and spend a lot of time with other brands that I'm friends with, and so does Alphonse. And we talk about some of our issues with how do you control these things? How do you have great quality control? And one of the ways to also have great quality control is to have your own packaging. So we decided we've got some roots in industrial design as well. And so we decided to make our own packaging. So we drew it, we figured out how it would work, and then we developed it. And so now we have our own packaging as well as our own manufacturing and as well as our own lab. So we're very unique in the industry, I think. I haven't spent a lot of time diving into what other brands do. We're pretty busy,
Yeah,
you know.
you're
But I did notice that most brands will go to specific packaging corporations
Sure.
and say, I would like this kind of design. And there's nothing wrong with that. But coming from an artist background, coming from industrial design, we knew that we could do something completely different and really enjoy doing that process as well. So it's been fun.
What's great about Viseart is because it is a small brand and everything is done really, what's the word? It's almost like from scratch. They make
Yeah.
everything from scratch. And it's pretty miraculous because there's so much control there. There's also the opportunity to evolve with the times and make change when change needs to be made, which was great.
And we can make it very quickly,
Yeah.
Right. And
which is helpful.
Now, on the flip side, there's only so much of the product that can be made
Yeah.
at a time because it
Correct.
is all handmade and,
Yeah.
Gracie and everyone's there doing their thing and so they're
There's only
making
so
and they have the
many of
kilns and so they're making that and then but it's all it never lasts very long because it just sells out every
Yeah.
time.
Right.
So it's really on the flip side it's almost like having couture product in a way.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And there's other companies, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with working with a manufacturer or a
Nothing
cosmetic
wrong with
manufacturer and having it made and getting custom molds. Viseart is just really very fortunate because the brand started that way.
Of our heritage.
Yeah, I like that because it's
pretty
handcrafted.
cool.
Everything
Yeah.
is handcrafted.
Yeah,
and a
down
lot
to the
of that
packaging,
thought
and we can
goes into
patent
everything.
it, and
So does that make it easier for you to go from concept to product?
Yes.
I would think a lot quicker.
we can move so quickly that it's like light speed. I mean, it's amazing how quickly we can move. In fact, we've been so spoiled with being able to move quickly that we've had a couple other brands say, I just don't understand that. Like, how is that even possible? And I've surprised myself. I think Fonz has definitely surprised himself.
There have been some conversations
Yes.
I'm like, that sounds really great, but let's be realistic. By the time we have it made, get it shipped over,
Right.
blah, blah, blah.
And the packaging done. And I'm
And
like,
then-
no, we're going to do it.
I'm like, okay.
Like
let's,
Petit Pro.
Let's
Came up
jump
with-
on it.
We
Yep.
talked about doing Le Petit Pro 6 years ago. And I remember Alphonse looking at me and saying, yes, but that's for later. And I'm like, this will be so fun. This would be so great for everyone. And then the time came where in October, and we said,
A few nights not sleeping.
Yeah. We said, well, we have the colors. We know what we want to do. We have all the designs done. We've been working on them for, a couple years now. What do you think? Let's just try to launch it. And so we talked to our other partner. We're like, okay, so let's make the packaging. And we start to sketch out the packaging and how we would like it to look at the kitchen table.
Yeah, and then we're making the colors.
And before we know it, a month later, there it is, and we're like, we're gonna launch it.
Yeah.
We're gonna do this thing, and that's how quickly we moved. And but it's years of pre-work to get us to that point.
Of course.
So now we can launch pretty much whatever we want because we've been behind the scenes, working on all this stuff.
I think it's amazing too because a lot of things that people might not take into consideration. What I do for my normal job is the fact that you even have machines that have all this. I mean, those machines are so expensive.
They're so expensive.
So expensive.
Yes.
And when you even go into a factory and you look at all this tooling and everything they do, and one little part breaks, it's like that's not just so you can go down and pick up a new part. It's all custom made.
Also, but you have to take when you're building a company, you need to not think about your paycheck and what vacation you're gonna get. That's later. Yeah. And if you've been in this industry for a long time, like we have, that's not how it works.
Sure.
Long days, long work hours. And that's later vacations. You think about, you take the money that you're making, people are counting on you.
Invest back in.
And you invest back in your company. Yeah. And that means you invest in your machines. You invest in the fact that maybe one could go down. And that if that goes down, you need a backup machine.
It's such an old-fashioned way of doing business, which is so refreshing. It's now what is considered to be more entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
Yes, and there's nothing wrong with it. Companies can get big investment funding behind them, and then you have the money to, do a lot really quick. But when every penny, every thought, every decision really counts,
right.
I feel like there's so much heart and soul that goes into that product and every decision. Some of these products we talked about maybe years ago, like Petite Pro, and then it was the right time to come forward with it. And like editorial brights, that was the idea. We sat on that for a little while, because we knew it would be a little more of a smaller market that would go for that.
Shows how thoughtful your products are.
Sure.
That you guys put thought into everything from packaging to concepts. Something I love about it too is I think it'd be interesting if people know that your products are handmade. So the difference between pouring your shadows and machine press, like I've tried some brands and they say, oh, it has a tough top layer on top. You have to rub it off. I'm like, what? And it's because it's stamping it. So how yours are different.
There's in the beginning, we were pressing everything in the lab with equipment that was, I think, bought from Dior, originally in France from their factory. And after a while, with shipping things, air shipping, because we've never actually shipped like by sea. We always airship because we need things so quickly.
Yeah.
I mean, even to this day, it's ridiculous. People want to,
It would help the bottom line.
But
That's the most expensive way to ship.
But we do. Anyway, so what can happen with hand pressing is that if you don't know how to do it properly, the product, if it's too hard, you can't get into it. If it's too light, it's going to crack. And with each shadow, it's going to be a different kind of texture, and it's going to press in a different way. So a matte may need to be pressed at 90%, whereas like maybe a shimmer needs to be pressed at like 98%. So we had to learn how each one of our textures needed to be pressed, and then we also needed to come up with a way to be able to press faster. So we've had to do a lot of growth with understanding how to make this all work. A lot of companies that build eyeshadows, they don't press, they do a liquid kind of formula, which is great. I mean, they can make beautiful things and
different.
Different.
It's almost a different medium.
It's a different medium, and they can put flowers on the top of it, basically like shapes. It's beautiful. But for us, it was more about, we want to do it the traditional way. And we want to be able to see the pigments the way they can show. And then we run into some trouble when we want to get something really kind of like metallic looking. Pressing takes away from the look of the actual pigment. So in photography, it's like in modern day photography, what you see isn't what you're getting. Actually, if you dig into it, even a little bit with a brush, it's far more beautiful than what a picture could look like.
Yeah.
So we've had to play a lot with trying to figure out the opposite of what most companies are dealing with, which is it photographs great, but when you try to get it on, it's not showing up as much because that particular company may need to be more specific about a brush or the style of brush, the kind of brush,
Yeah, those are kind of like those jelly formulas, or
That's a whole new.
it's a different medium.
Yeah.
It's a whole different medium.
It's really
So,
interesting.
yeah.
If I think back to this palette here, the matte palette one, this is like the cult following. It's like it's the Holy Grail. It really is the one from the early or the late 90s when it first came out.
Yeah.
And it's exactly the same formula, the same product, pressed exactly the same way. And that's why whether it's on set, fashion, in any genre in the industry, you'll always see one of these in a makeup artist kit. And it's usually, you'll see a few tins at the bottom because it's like their Holy Grail. They use it so much. And with that being said, I mean, it's great that Viseart has been able to stay true to the heritage of the original, and it hasn't had a change. And it's still so, it was visionary at the time, but it really is, it has raised, I think, the bar in our industry, which is nice.
And one of the things that I think people need to understand too is that each one of these shades obviously has a different kind of pigment texture. It's a different color.
Yeah.
So each one of those shades is a different formula.
Right.
Just slightly different formula, but it's a very small ingredient deck. And so we're very fortunate that we understand how that works and how we press it.
Yes.
Well,
So
each one is almost pressed differently.
for itself, right?
Yeah.
So we had somebody say to us once, raised a question. They said, "Oh, well, one of these browns, it's not as soft as it used to be when you put a brush in it." And it's like, well, actually, it was breaking, And so then what was happening is that you go to your job, you open up your kit, and you have something that's exploded. So we are answering to you and making sure that we're following through with our process, so that you can do the best job that
I like that. So while we're on that topic, why there's like a common, everyone says that matte shadows are harder to get better than shimmer shadows in general. And I know we've talked about that. Is that because of the milling or the
I can
pigments?
answer a little bit of that, and then I'll let Alphonse answer the rest. It has to do with the expense. It's very expensive, and has to do with the milling for sure. It needs to be very, very finely milled over and over again, and then it needs to be pressed properly. So on the matte side, it's very exact. Like, you have to be spot on, and what you see in the palette needs to be what you've got on the hand, what you've got on the eye, and also for us, global skin is important. So it's not just about me; it's about every person who wants to wear our product. We're trying to make it so that anyone can wear it and look good.
True.
And be color true. Exactly. So it won't go ashy, or it won't go too pink, and kind of change and oxidize. So again, less is more,
And with these great metallics and these really shimmery finishes that we're seeing out there, it was interesting because we were just finalizing fall and holiday. And, it's one thing to have an idea here, and then we're trying to create it. And what's hard is that, the more metallic or the more shimmery in this form of creating this type of makeup, it's almost like the base needs to be a little more sheer. And then what happens when you put too much mica in something, and then you got to press it, well, it's pressing mica on top of mica, and it's going to fall apart. So there is such a fine balance of what we have to do in order to see that, shimmery, illuminated texture where they are basically like a disco ball reflecting off one another. But if you make it really dark and matte, well, there goes all the reflectivity.
Yeah.
And I remember I had a moment, I was like, but I just want to see that pigment press. So we pressed it, and of course it was like nothing. It was like goo, it fell apart. And I'm like, all right, you appeased me, let's go back to the way you're supposed to do it. So it is a really, it's an amazing...
Sometimes
it's an art form. In getting
it is. Just to create one shade can take 2 days. Just to get it right.
If we're there.
Yeah, exactly.
Otherwise, the poor team, we're shipping back and forth.
We're going back and forth. And when we are working together as one cohesive team, and we're all in Paris at the same time, even then, we added up
a week and about 4 shades a day. That's all we were able to do.
It's an interesting thing too, like with the cheap palettes. I think we tested those on over
60 people.
Over 60 people, just him alone, testing it for like 2 months. And then we also had a set out on set, film sets, and they were testing them just to see, because there are things we're missing that we need. Help us out here. So between all the research and development of that, and Alphonse.
Well, I think that, we were making a very bold statement, we're going to create a blush palette that's going to represent a full range of skin from the fairest to the deepest. So with that being said, we had to make sure these colors really read true.
Yeah.
So we have Muse, we have some great school partners. We went down to one here in San Francisco, the SFIC, and I have access to their full student body. So therefore we have a wonderful, almost like focus group, from the fairest to Hispanic to African American to Philippine to Asian, and we could actually see how did it really work. And that's a pretty great opportunity.
And also be minimalize like the shades. Like it's like taking it down and saying, okay, well, of course we want 10 more shades. Who wouldn't want 10 more shades in either direction? But what can we do that will help the makeup artist? And then take that concept and say, well, what really worked for the everyday woman who wants to go from day to play? What was working? And so I talked to the people who are using it every day. And then we start to look at those shades and go, well, what if we went up a little notch with the color, a little down a little notch, and did that, and then put it into the Theory collection. And so that's how we progress into Theory every single time. It's always from pro to what does the everyday woman or human want.
Keeping in that, that a lot of people I think don't think of that aren't artists, because a lot of us consumers aren't, is the fact that you can mix these all together. Because I've had some women of color tell me that they're like, oh, well, I won't be able to use this whole because I can't use this whole top row. But I'm like, you can mix them all like an artist palette.
Right.
And one of the ways that I actually teach this with young makeup artists, I'm like, you have a base shade for every skin tone, fair, medium, to tan to African American skin tone. So this is your base shade that if you were a really rich mocha, this would be, maybe like under the eyebrow, across the lid for really natural. And this one you have 3 undertones of taupe, warm, cool, and neutral. I mean, that's so helpful. And you got your brown to your mocha to your sienna to your black to your, so whether you're creating a nude eye or a smoky eye or you're going to age someone, I mean, this palette is utilized on so many ways. It's amazing because they're just the core centrals, which is good.
Which is one of the things that some people, they kind of laugh about too, is they say, what am I going to do with that?
I love, that's my favorite one. I love the orange. That's
it's so essential. It's so essential.
It's like you can mix it in into these.
And that kind of comes into play a little bit because now we're going all over the place in this interview. But when we created this, should I just go into it with you?
Yes.
Yeah.
So this here you have basically, we created them where the system is, you have base to like a contour or a transition color down into maybe like a base shade or a shading. And you have fair skin, you have medium to tan skin, and these are the undertones. These are your intensifiers. So these are the base shades that you could mix to make it go deeper into an African American skin tone or more editorial or a little more sultry. So, sorry, I think it's just kind of brilliant. But as a makeup artist, that is, or to the end consumer, because I know so many people love these. They're like, oh my God, I have every like neutral warm tone I ever, but you can create a multitude of looks.
Yeah.
You know.
I really feel like if you have these 4, you can do anything. Anything.
And occasionally, we run into the issue though where we're like, oh, really wish I had this right now.
Right.
And then it's like, take a note. And that's kind of how we keep building.
Right.
And then we get together and we collaborate and we say, okay, what are we missing?
Well, it's so funny because it's, we say that this is like the core staple. Like if you had this, you could actually just go on a job and use this.
Oh, because you can use this even for lips.
Right.
You can put it with a little bit of lip gloss.
You can highlight and contour the face.
But it's ridiculous.
But then as my one business partner said, Brian, he was like, I love them, but how many more? My box is like just getting full. And I'm like, I know. I just have to have them all too. Yeah. It's like, it's just, look, as makeup artists, we have to have fun too.
Yeah.
We want new things.
Yeah.
So that's good.
We love the collectors too. This is always amazing to me because I can't even imagine what your cost on production of that is, because it's like straight pigment.
That's almost straight pigment, and we have to be really careful with it. The sourcing of that is very specific for us, and You know, I have to say this concept was something that Alphonse really, really wanted to do from day one. When we sat down in the beginning, and it was like, okay, how many matte palettes do we want to create? And I'm not telling you what we're doing. But we had some staples that we needed. Ones that I wanted, ones that he wanted. And so this one has been fantastic for us. I was a little nervous when we launched it. I'm like, oh gosh. What, you know?
Right, because it's so bright and
Yeah,
almost like
yeah.
crazy color.
Yeah, but
as an artist, they're like, it's color theory. It's your basic essential shades, and you know, like, and we do call that, you actually picked up on, we call that one the pigment palette. It's not an eyeshadow palette because they're pigments that can be utilized anywhere. And pigments are different than, there are different pigments in pigment palettes than there are in traditional eyeshadow palettes, as you're aware of. So it's important because you can mix and match and do something really cool over the top or editorial. And we have so many fashion makeup artists that love that one. Or you can actually just bump up a little bit of a brown shadow if it's turning too ashy on your skin tone. And that part is really great.
And keeping in that, I love your purples. And purples, we've talked about how
They're hard.
those are to
Really,
get
really
correct
difficult.
because we talked about, I think, sourcing the pigments, and that would be interesting.
Sure, purples are, I mean, it's so funny because we get these ideas, we buy like a ribbon or pieces of material, and we're like, we're gonna make this. And it is really hard because it is that, it goes back to that balance of like, well, if you think about what's the core of purple? It's red and blue, two essential colors. Where does the red pigment come from, right? It's either going to be naturally sourced, which would be carmine, or it's going to be an iron oxide.
Or there are other natural sources,
Right.
and so you can like twist it around with that.
Right. But sometimes in order to get the payoff, the pigment that you want, that's what's hard. And when you're working with more the natural source, which is what we prefer to do, it's almost a little bit drier. Maybe at times not as, the payoff isn't as consistent as if you went to a lake dye.
Yeah.
Which we don't really use in traditional shadows anymore. And so it's tricky to mix those
very, very
two
tricky.
and put it together. And then when you start mixing in the pearls and the reflectors, the reflecting pigments, that's what we're running into. And I feel because at the lab they were so patient.
Yeah.
And you guys nailed them. All of yours are really nice.
Oh, wait till you see what's coming. But I won't say.
So how do you come up with ideas for new palettes? Is it what you hear from artists that is missing, or is it what you just look in your mix and say what you think is missing? Or?
I think between the two of us and other people that we also collaborate with, we all see where the holes are in the market in every genre, I would say.
Yep,
whether it's TV, whether it's major motion film, whether it's editorial print,
Or
bridal.
We hear it all.
Gosh, we hear everything. And so we listen, you know, and I think when you want to build a collaborative team and you want to have a sense of community, like he said before, you don't do it alone. You know, you do it with, you know, you build. And I think one of the things that I hear often is, oh, you're listening to us. And it's like, well, why wouldn't I want to listen?
Right.
Like, what's the point? You know, me, myself, and I. Like, and Alphonse is not that way either. So that's where we come up with different things. And I love bridal makeup. I love working with artists who are excited for that, you know, that day for their bride, you know.
Special day, exactly.
And so there's something very special about that. I love the film industry, and somebody's doing an amazing film and they need some crazy stuff. I love listening to it. I'm very curious, you know, and I think having an artist's mind and having that curiosity helps the brand. And then having Alphonse's corporate experience, which is different than my corporate experience, and also his artistry, because he's so incredibly talented and he is so humble with what he's accomplished in his life. And he won't ever let us talk about it, so we won't. But having that also has been extremely helpful. So.
You know, it's wonderful. Muse, we do about 12 trade shows a year. That's a lot for a company.
Yeah, that is.
And Anastasia is at all the major trade shows, if not all of them. And essentially because she gets to interact with the artists, she gets to listen and ask questions. And usually it's like the common meeting spot. You got all the artists coming over to say hello, hugs and kisses, and we get to listen and we get to ask. And that part is so valuable. So, you know, Muse is the platform for Viseart for the pro market.
Yes.
And then from there, then Viseart has its partner with Sephora, where that's more their retail market. And it's great because therefore we can create, stay true to the brand and create the products that are needed for both.
Yeah.
You know, so sometimes the concepts are out of need,
Yeah.
Sometimes the concepts are out of,
Dreams.
crazy
Dreams.
dreams or,
Wants.
fabrics or ideas
Yeah.
or it really,
It can come from art. It can come
Sometimes
from
from
it can
art.
come from like Le Petit Pro, is the Little Prince. We, it can come from so many different things, and it's like, how do you incorporate that into the actual brand itself?
And isn't that where your ribbons palette? Didn't
Yes.
it come from ribbon fabric?
Ribbons.
Oh, that was a
Yeah.
wonderful
Ribbons.
day that we
we
had.
had tons of ribbons.
We had
and-
so
Can you
much
grab-
fun.
I can picture you guys digging
Tons.
through
No,
ribbons.
we had a confession moment, and we're like, oh yeah, I have a thing for ribbons too, and let's go downtown and go look at all the fabric stores and look at. Then we went to antique stores, looked at antique ribbons, and then we started looking at the history of velvets and silks and got books, and we did research, and we
You guys
collaborated.
nerded out, and I like it.
Yeah, it was
Wow,
fun.
that's really good.
Yeah, so Ribbons Bohème, or however,
Right, exactly.
the name just keeps
Right.
morphing different things. And bijou,
it was all like the velvets and
velvets and gems and
gems
different
and-
things and time periods. And so studying about different time periods in history, obviously.
But then what's really important, I will say that's really important, is that anyone can come out with any kind of color. Any company can do that. And this is where then we're fortunate enough, because then we can test it. And then I'll make sure that, well, how is this shade going to read on skin? Because purples, we love the purples, and everyone wants a lot of purples.
Right.
But purples can easily make someone look tired.
Yeah.
Or it can make someone look like they have a
Sick.
bruise or black eye. And it's great if you're aging someone.
Right.
But usually in this case, people want purples for a different reason. So I always say, like, oh, that's great. And we look at these purples and we're like, it's a little gray. It's going to make someone look sick.
Right.
So I think that's the part of where the artistry and the
Right.
heritage of the brand, and then there's, Anastasia can speak with all the different artists on all, whether it's like TV, she's actually on set and she gets to speak with them and see what's working, what's not working, get their advice, their feedback. And that is so valuable for a company.
Yeah.
Really valuable for a company.
And we also love collaborating with other brands. So we've been really fortunate that there are some other small handmade brands that are just, we all hang out together.
Yeah.
And so we listen to each other's issues and where we're trying to go, and we help each other. And that's been really nice. And, one brand that comes to mind, it's another female owner, and she's not from this country, and I've watched her just expand so rapidly and do such a great job, and we're so happy for each other. And we'll look at each other's products and be like, okay, I'm going to try to stay away from what you're doing. You did that, I want to do something similar too. We must be like-minded. But however, I'm going to try to stay away, because you also don't want to make the consumer feel as though it's like, but that's over here and that's over there. So in between all the other stuff that we're doing, when we have time, we'll look out there and kind of go, oh, okay, we don't need this kind of a shade, or we don't need to do that. Somebody else is already doing that. They're doing a great job at it.
Just let it be.
Let it be.
I always say,
it's
let it be.
fantastic.
It's
There
good.
is a place in this industry for everyone.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
room, plenty of room. So, that's how we feel about it.
Background to the name? Does that mean anything?
Viseart. Viseart, so it's Vise, comes off the name of visage, which is face, and then obviously art.
Oh, cool.
So face art.
Currently, you have blushes, bronzers, highlights, contour, eyeshadows. Are you guys looking to expand into even more products down the road?
Well, Viseart actually is a very full line, from skincare all the way down through everything you could ever think about in cosmetics.
Yeah,
didn't know you
liquid
had
foundation.
Oh, I
A
didn't
lot of
know
it's only been in certain parts of the world, but
Yeah. In small batches. So you have to remember, well, not you, but everybody needs to understand small batches. And small batches means that we don't just say, oh, we're in the United States, we're going to bring everything that we do here. We can't do that. We won't be able to survive.
I remember talking with you about that, about how certain areas, even in Africa, like different depths of skin are different in certain pockets of the world. So it's not something that makes sense to bring all over to certain areas.
So French global skin is going to be very different than American global skin. Very different.
Yeah.
So why would you bring an entire French line to the US that people go, well, that goes ashy on my skin, or that goes too pink?
Yeah.
And why would you take that same line to Asia and expect these different kinds of skins to,
And,
so
and,
we
and
have
culturally
a
too. Culturally, certain shades are more popular or utilized in others. So
Right.
But let's just leave it this way. You'll be seeing a little bit more and more slowly move
Slowly,
in,
carefully.
which is going to be really exciting.
Just like the way that we, make the product. It's slowly, carefully, well thought out. And we also have to test it on my skin before it's released.
Yeah, because you're super sensitive.
I am the most sensitive of all, it seems, so it takes time.
These are the new beauties.
Yes.
I don't know if the camera can see them from here.
Was discussing with Alphonse that if I do get to take a vacation or just a little bit of time off, that hauling around this palette, or two of them, can be a little heavy just on my own. So that's one of our like kind of discussions. And he's like, well, it's not just all about you.
I think I did say that. I'm like, okay, really? I'm like, all right. So, right.
What can we do?
Okay, I'm gonna tell her. I was like,
Yes.
She was like, well, what if I wanted to go to Ibiza? And I'm like, okay, really? And she's like, I just wanted to throw one thing in my bag. And I'm like, okay, I get it. I get the concept.
Yeah.
And that really is how nuance came into play. Nuance is really about the various, how skin looks in different summer lights. And it has that beautiful shimmer, like we have it all on Anastasia. It's natural, it's easy, it's weightless, or it could be full throttle.
Yeah.
As you would like.
Yeah.
I mean, I can see people going to town. So, and it's the first Theory palette that actually has satin and metallics.
Right.
Where most Theory palettes, you have 3 matte and 3 more shimmers or metallics.
Right.
So
Nice.
this one is really kind of designed to be more like that summer skin, just shimmery, beautiful, glowing, or full throttle.
And we wanted to pair it with something for the face.
Yeah.
So that you could just grab two things and go.
So it really is exactly where you kind of have your collection. So if you wanted to, some people just might want to wear a little bit of a bronzer, or maybe they put a little touch of blush on the cheek,
beautiful.
or highlight and bronze, or all three. Which
Put
is
it
good.
all on my face.
All at once. So these two kind of really do work together as a warm collection.
And then we should mention, and this is the other thing, it's like, we need a mirror.
Oh, you added the mirror, yeah.
So then we added the mirror and we changed our packaging design a little bit, and that took a little bit more time than we thought it would. And we were really excited. Like, it was like, oh, well, slowly we'll put this packaging into the other Theory palettes, the originals, the minks, the cashmere, these guys. But for this collection only, we put the mirror in so that people could put it in their bag and go.
I love this too because if anybody wants to even build their own from the
Absolutely.
Theory palettes, they can stick whatever sticks they want together.
And if they bought the other three, especially for set people, they can take all of that and make up after bags with a mirror, because sometimes they need that as well. So
if you're working with certain lead talent, you have to basically create the look, and it goes in their set bags. So you might have 5 set bags.
Yeah.
One little book or something just for each person, and so you'd have your own. So it all depends how artists like to work.
Right, which is nice.
And then this one here, I kept saying, I was like, you know what? It's like, I know people want purples. We need to create like a minx, but in the like a purple minx, that type of thing. And so that was really the concept, where you have really a wardrobe of more cool tones. You have 3 mattes, so we stay very consistent to the whole concept of Theory, and you have 3 where you have one's more of a satin and then 2 metallic colors. But for those who love purple, they will have every hue, and we kind of said it almost looks like a real amethyst piece of
that's what we were
quartz.
looking for.
Yeah.
You have the full range if you looked out in the light, and then once again, then you would have the cheek palette for cool tones. And these definitely are like very wearable and sheer and pretty, but you can build them, which is nice too.
I like that. And that looks like a plum that I can wear.
Easy.
Plums get too dark on me, and then it looks like I was hitting the face.
We spent a lot of time on this and thinking it through, because we wanted to make sure that it would be wearable for everyone, and then also for the pro market, that it's something everybody can use in that side too.
And one question I know that we're getting, and you will definitely get as well from your viewers and your fans, are like, well, are they new shades? They're all new shades.
All new shades.
Even the blush shades, the bronzer, the highlighter, we made sure that they're almost like shades that are somewhat in between, that a makeup artist would mix, but for the everyday beauty maven, she doesn't want to think about that.
And she doesn't have time. And now that, also makeup artists are like, I don't have time.
Right, because we have to do it quicker and faster and faster.
Right.
And so you guys don't have any dupes in your shades, do you? No,
nothing.
So they're all unique.
Everything is
I like
unique.
that.
Yeah.
So that's nice, so you're not buying doubles, because sometimes palettes are like half the same shades as another one when they do like holidays, so then you're getting double. But I like that.
That's good.
I think if we ever decided to do that, for holiday, which we haven't really ever done holiday. But if we ever decided to do it, we would let people know.
Yeah.
You know, and we would be very specific, because the last thing we want is for someone to feel as though they've been taken advantage of in some way. That's not the way our brand works.
Well, and like in the Petite Pro, we're getting, I mean, I get Muse, we get it all the time. They're like, well, I'm almost going through it. Like, do you have it in a full size? Like, hold on.
Yeah.
I can give you a recommendation of the one that looks, you know, that's in the beige family or in the taupe family.
Yeah.
But, you know, we all get that one color and we have to have it.
But that was very specific too with Petite Pro.
Right.
You know, like especially like the gold shade.
Yeah.
It was something that we all really wanted. And then we also had somebody say to us that one of the shades looked like a minx shade, but it's not.
Oh,
Right.
I think
We
it was
know-
a reddish color.
Yeah.
the
Right,
reddish one.
right. But
Well, I'm hearing that just because, you know, on Instagram,
Yeah.
people look at the pictures and I'm like, well, one is more orange.
Yeah.
And this one is more that rose
Yeah,
gold,
you can see the
rusty
difference in
tones.
person. It's
Sure.
always hard sometimes in
Oh, of
pictures.
course.
People are like, which
Oh.
one is
Because
that?
you
You're like,
have
it's
to
red,
go to
it's the same.
computers and
we
your
have made
phone.
mistakes on our
Oh.
phones. Oh
Yeah.
my goodness, the stories I can tell you where we've approved something.
And it looks
And
slightly
then
off.
and then somebody catches it about a week later, and you look at it again with true photography, and you're like, "Oh, call the factory! Don't make that shade. Too late. It's sitting
Or
in
well,
raw material."
also too with the swatching,
Yeah.
which is great. I mean,
Yeah.
it's who would have known that would have become such a phenomenon, you know,
Yeah,
with all
yeah.
of this.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And it's great, but you know, also too how those colors read on every skin tone
Yeah.
is going to be slightly different if you're outside light or inside light, and
Yeah.
you know, so sometimes you just have to try it for yourself.
Yeah.
And with swatching too, I think going in and using your fingers and understanding what you could get
Yeah.
if you were to use the brush over and over again, or what using the proper brush for the shade,
Right.
Yeah.
and seeing what it's going to be.
Yeah.
And so we spend a lot of time working with ESUM brushes and making sure that the colors are reading true and they're not splotchy.
Well, that's the biggest thing is that when we're developing, it's interesting because, you know, naturally we all want to do this, and you do in the factory, you're doing that, and then we
Yeah.
have everyone also with the brush. Now with the brush.
Yeah.
Now with the brush.
So you have to make
And the
sure.
item.
I know, I
And
love
with the
that.
right brush, you know,
Yeah.
not just any brush.
No, well, you need a brush that has some control and lay down on pigment. So like we
Yeah.
normally work with a sable brush, and you can basically see, because what you see is what the person expects to get.
Yeah.
And that's another thing I want to say. You know, a lot of makeup artists know this, and sometimes the end consumer, you know, or the woman who's just maybe starting for the first time, she's like, oh, you know, it's just so strong, and I'm like, depends on the brush. Use a soft goat hair brush.
Yeah.
You're going to get more of a sheer to medium lay down. Use a sable hair brush, you're going to get a full application. Maybe that's your nighttime look. You know, use a synthetic brush. Who knows what you're going to get?
Yeah.
That's a
It
nice
depends-
option, but
yeah,
it's
it
a very
depends
different
on-
type of finish.
Yes.
Right?
Which kind of brush it is.
Exactly.
So right now, guys, Alphonse is going to do a demo on a model with some of the Theory palettes for us.
Right. Hi everyone, I'm Alphonse with Muse Beauty, and I'm here with our beautiful model Kana. And today we're just going to do a couple of quick steps to show you the use of the new Theory palette in Amethyst. The basic concept of the Theory palettes by Viseart is that you can really go, what we say, from day to play. So you have 3 matte shades, and you have 3 shades that have a little bit more of a shimmer to a metallic finish. So it really kind of will basically ebb and flow whatever your mood might be. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start with the base shade, and we're going to start by just pressing it over the entire eye. I'm working with a soft goat hair brush, and this will give you more of a sheer to medium application. And as you see, you want to really press it into the skin for an even laydown and for added longevity. That's a pretty color. The next step that we'll do is we're going to work with the medium shade, and this will be to contour the eye. I'm going to work with a soft hair brush made of squirrel, and we're just going to let the brush just lightly just glide right over the contour of her eye. And this is a great way to give a little bit of a natural dimension to the eye. And from there, you can just diffuse and blend those shades out. Now there's nothing on this brush in the blending process. because you don't want to create a secondary color. Open pores, very pretty. For some, this might be enough makeup with a little mascara, gloss, and go. And for others, they may want to then take it to the next level. So for the third step, to add some definition to the eye, we're going to work with the deepest purple. I'm going to work with a straight edge brush, and we're just going to press it right along the base of the lash line. You can do this wet. If you want a more defined look, you can use it dry. If you want a softer, more diffuse line, and just as we're doing now. So just lightly press it right into the roots. Open force. And you can see how it just adds a little bit of definition to the root of the lash line. If you want to make it a little softer or smoky, we can just take a soft little brush and just lightly diffuse the edge. Okay, and that might be to the point where that would be enough makeup for you. So the next step, as we say, this palette will take you from day to play, and we'll give you a full wardrobe of whatever you're looking for in eye makeup. And let's say now we wanted to basically entertain and play with some of the shimmers, which everyone loves. I'm gonna start with, this shade here. This is gorgeous. And we're just gonna press it. Now I'm using a short little sable hair brush. And as you can see, I'm just pressing it right onto the center of the lid. And this is more of the Viseart metallic formula that everyone just loves. It's beautiful. And that in the center of the eye is going to bring a little more dimension by bringing the center forward. And then I'll add something a little darker. Let's go into the dark amethyst. And with the same brush, just begin to press that in at the outer corner, diffusing it into the lighter shade. And then I'm just going to blend out and diffuse. Very pretty. So now we're going to go ahead and just add a little more definition, working with the deep matte purple. Once again, just using this dry, pressing along the lash line. And then I'm going to work with a little soft brush with nothing on it, and just lightly diffuse back and forth. Now what's great about this, you can take it to as much or as little as you like. And for those who like to add a little bit of that highlight at the inner eye, you can go with the light pink. And just add a little bit of that beautiful light glow. And I heard some of you just go, ooh! And that would be the amethyst. So with the spring collection, we also have the new cheek palette. The cheek palette's great because you have your highlighter, a soft touch of blush, and bronzer. So you can choose to do more sporty or take it all the way. First thing I'll do is show you a little touch of color. Smile. It's a great way to start. Placement of your blush, just right onto the apples, going backward, up toward the hairline and the top of the ear, just like that. If you wanted to add a little bit of highlight, it's a beautiful little satin finish, a little touch of shimmer. And then if you wanted to add a little bit of soft bronzing effect, to contour around the frame of the face, enhance with a little bit of dimension. Works beautifully. This is called Enamored, and what's great about Enamored is that it's going to coordinate with all of the cool tones in your makeup wardrobe. So now we're going to work with the Viseart Theory Nuance palette. This is palette number 6. This has a very unique approach because they all have a really soft satin to a metallic finish. With that being said, it really emulates the look of skin in the sunlight. And for those of you who love rose gold, these three hues there are really from the fair, medium to the deepest in the rose gold hue. Let's just start. We can do with this first shade and just base this over the entire eye. Really is like a soft, flesh tone candlelight hue. Very pretty. If you wanted to bring a little bit of dimension, you can keep it really soft. You could work with this soft gold, like a beige sand color, or you can go a little deeper into this mocha. Let's just keep it really soft. But if you had a deeper skin tone, you could also mix the two together. Then from here, depending on the look that you'd like, let's go ahead and just add a little bit of the deepest brown at the outer corner of the eye. And then we'll blend. This palette's so easy because it really is very mistake proof. They're just warm, easy shades that all naturally just diffuse into one another. And because they all have a little bit of a shimmer effect to them, what you'll find is that it actually is just a really soft, glowing look. Now, if we want to take it and start playing with some of the rose golds, I'm gonna work with a small little sable brush. Let's pick up the medium tone. Let's just start by pressing that along the center of the lid. Then we can go into the deeper shade and create some impact at the outer corner, or go all across the eye. For those who love minks, you will love this palette. And it is not the same color. This has more of that pink rose gold, whereas the minks palette has more of that fiery orange gold. You can even take a little bit of a lighter shade, bring a little inner highlight, and then let's just diffuse the colors. So now we're going to go in and add some definition, working with the deeper brown shade, the square edge brush, and just press right into the bed of the lash line. From there, go back to our little soft rounded brush to diffuse. If you want to do a little highlight, do a little bit of the champagne. Just add a little bit of that glow. So next within this collection is the cheek palette in a blaze. And once again, there's a soft touch of cheek color. It's a soft, easy to wear coral. Just running that apple, smiling. An easy place to start. You can add a little bit of the gold highlighter. And then if you want to bring a little warmth, just going to blend to make sure there's no hard lines.
So thank you so much for tuning in, guys. I want to thank both of you for being here, and you as well. See you next time, guys. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.